everyone, this is Eve Picker, and if you listen to this podcast series, you're going to learn how to make some change. Hi there, thanks so much for joining me today for the latest episode of Impact Real Estate Investing. My guest today is Lorenzo Perez, the co-founder of Venue Developments, a redevelopment practice based in Phoenix, Arizona. Lorenzo describes Venue's work as crafting one-of-a-kind environments that are sensitive to experiences, neighborhoods, and people. That's an understatement. Lorenzo's approach is that of an entrepreneur. He takes opportunities and risks that most developers would not in order to create projects that are carefully crafted, artistic, community-centric masterpieces. I wish Lorenzo worked in Pittsburgh. Listen in to hear more. And be sure to go to evepicker.com to find out more about Lorenzo on the show notes page for this episode. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletters so you can stay tuned into the latest news about real estate impact investing and the latest projects on my crowdfunding platform, smallchange.com. So Lorenzo, I know a little bit about your work, but I would love to tell our listeners, or have you tell our listeners, a little bit about what you do.
Sure. I am a real estate entrepreneur based in Phoenix, Arizona. And I say entrepreneur more than a developer because we are focused on creative real estate development with a focus on urban infill, adaptive reuse, and creative redevelopment projects. Every one is a prototype and a one-off. So they're very entrepreneurial in terms of what do we do with a particular building, or how do we find a home for a particular tenant, or what kind of use can we implement, or a variety of uses. And then we got to figure out how to put it all together, how to finance it, operate it, execute and deliver it. So they're very creative. You're
a little bit of an artist, right?
You know, it's funny. I've had several people tell me that they say, you know, your projects are so creative that you're really an artist, and real estate and the various users and forces that go into real estate project are your medium. And so I always tell people now that I sort of play in habitable and income producing sculpture.
That's really great.
Because we are significantly manipulating old beat up buildings into pretty fun and inspired places.
Yeah, I think you've told me that you go for some pretty ugly ducklings.
Yes, the uglier, the more broken, the better. Usually that translates to a better buying opportunity, or also just motivation and enthusiasm from government and neighborhood stakeholders.
Yeah, so maybe the uglier, the better the transformation as well, right?
Exactly. I love to bring people through our projects for a variety of reasons, but from start to finish, I love the insight we get from their observations. And quite often I'm actually surprised at things they pick up on that we don't, because we're so in the weeds with them. But I always tell people that I love to bring them through the different stages, because it really does make it more impactful at the end.
So the ugly buildings are a blank palette, right?
They really are. And I always tell people, we got to take you through the pain so you can enjoy the game.
That's right. Yeah, real estate is very messy, and it seems to get worse before it gets better. So
yes.
Anyway, so what are you working on at the moment?
So at the moment, I'm working on the largest project that we've ever undertaken. We've been working on it now we're going probably into 3 years from when we started acquiring the buildings and then formulating a joint venture with a larger developer. We're working on a 2-acre site right next to a property that we redeveloped about 5 years ago on a light rail line. And it's 2 1950s office buildings that we are converting into a boutique hotel campus, a 79-room boutique hotel. So we are navigating a variety of things. We have transit-oriented development standards that we're navigating. It's a joint venture between three parties, ourselves, another developer named Vintage Partners, much larger, stronger balance sheet, way more experience. They came to us and wanted to partner with us on it. Our hotel operator is based out of Los Angeles and Palm Springs. And so they are a co-investor as well as our operating partner. And so it's the two buildings were tired and mid-century desert modern architecture. While we're going through it,
which sounds really sexy, but really isn't.
It is, yeah. It's kind of in Phoenix. That's all we got. We're like early 20s, and then we eliminated a bunch of stuff. That Phoenix is a mid-century city, and we appreciate that they're out of Palm Springs because they really do value that kind of architecture, that sort of funky, streamlined, linear. One of our buildings is pretty unique to the area. It follows the Googie style architecture, which was usually reserved for like roadside architecture for restaurants or banks. So it's got some playful forms, a sawtooth roof. It's got a fourth floor penthouse and a roof deck that we're going to convert to a cocktail lounge and outdoor view experience. And so it's got a lot of challenges. The buildings were tired. We're navigating serious code upgrades because of the change in use from office to hospitality and assembly.
Oh, yeah, that would be big. Yeah.
Yes, it's big. And we're also dealing with an economic forces here that are beyond our control. One, the market is extremely elevated, busy, a lot of investment to Phoenix. Phoenix is sort of late to the recovery from the Great Recession because we went so deep into the recession. So we have there's just a lot going on here. A lot of people moving here. So a lot of things are under construction, a lot of things in development. So we are dealing with limited labor, and that translates to unpredictability on schedule, but also just significant cost escalation.
Wow.
So we're navigating a tough environment in terms of, and we've also, which is weird for Arizona, we're also coming out of, I think, one of the wettest winters that we've ever had. And so that didn't help us because it caught us right as we were doing all our site
one of our offerings was a little modular house in Pittsburgh, and they were really seriously delayed because of the rain. They could not dig the ground. It was just a mud pool, and we're now in probably the worst summer ever in Pittsburgh. So it's really rare for us to have to deal with that because we have over 300 sunny days a year. But we were in the ground with underground retention and utilities and starting foundations, and we would get wet, and it'd take us 2 to 3 weeks to dry out enough just to get on the site. And then we could work a little bit, and then the rain would come back. And so it definitely set us back probably 3 months, I would say, for weather. Yeah, that's a long time when you're holding land and have construction interest, etc. Yeah. Be sure to go to evepicker.com and sign up for my free educational newsletter about impact real estate investing. You'll be among the first to hear about new projects you can invest in. That's evepicker.com. Thanks so much. I know you think a lot about your audience, because you are building art, right?
Yes.
Installation art. And so who's the audience for this project? It isn't just a hotel, right?
No, so our projects are really rooted in community, and that's always been our intention since we founded our company 11 years ago, was to create community gathering places and artistic settings and really create these distinct destinations that provide an experience. Our audience, surprisingly, has been fairly consistent across our hospitality projects. Most of our projects were restaurant or retail anchored, but they tend to attract, we're seeing a pattern that they tend to attract young to old. And really, it's less about age demographic. It's more about really people who just enjoy getting together in a communal setting. They like an indoor-outdoor experience. We have the benefit of being able to do that here 9 out of 12 months a year. I would even say if you're from the Southwest, you can even handle the summers, as intense as they are, the dry heat does allow us to be outside even in 110, 115 degree weather if we're in the shade or we're in pools. And so if we design for weather, it can really be a special year-round place. So I would say our audience really is young to old. And when I say young, like some of our places, we have a lot of candy and ice cream shops, so they can get pretty young, and they can also get pretty old, But the hotel is probably a little more defined. They are targeting a 21 and older crowd. So I would say that one's probably 21 into probably your 80s would be our target audience for our hotel project.
What about the neighborhood it's in? How do you think about what you're doing for that neighborhood?
What I love about this neighborhood is that it was in a location that suffered when the light rail went through it. If you're from Arizona or Phoenix, locals know there's always been a built-in bias west of Central Avenue. Central Avenue runs north-south and bisects the city of Phoenix. And history will show that people kind of look down on the avenues versus the streets. It's sort of the demising line. If you go west of it, you're in the avenues. If you go east of it, you're in the streets. So the neighborhood we're in was pretty disinvested when we purchased our property next door back in 2012. They were having a lot of issues with vacancy, transients. Even though the residential neighborhoods around them were fairly stable, there was just a lot of attractive nuisances and people weren't investing there. So we saw the opportunity with its proximity to the central corridor as an opportunity to go in there and start accumulating some of these buildings. And they really do have kind of an interesting collection of mid-century, early 50s building stock that are pretty unique even to Phoenix's standards. They were tired, they were disrepaired, there was some vacant lots. So we started with one property a few years ago, and then we're successful in acquiring 3 or 4 others on each side of our property. And so that has been our focus, was to sort of do a district scale development through a series of small incremental projects.
Nice.
And so in the neighborhood, really, we couldn't be more grateful. They're supportive. They love us. They support what we're doing. This project in particular really reflects kind of our approach to development. And I always tell people, we really do take an entrepreneurial and opportunistic approach. We aren't limited by product. We go into a neighborhood and we're really basing our decisions on context. And so we look at things like scale, impact to the surrounding neighborhood. In this particular neighborhood, when we introduced our retail dining experience next door, it was really received with great success, and the community loves it. And we have plenty of multifamily housing around us. We have transit right in our front door. We have single family historic neighborhoods around us. What we were missing in that area really was maybe some creative office, and we were really missing hospitality. A place to stay in the neighborhood, because the area is abundant with all kinds of shopping, from really kind of edgy, shabby chic type stuff to upscale shopping. And
so when do you think it's going to be finished? Because I'm going to book a room.
Yes. Well, we would love your support. We'd love to have you out here. We are targeting a November opening, early November.
Soon.
Yes. Yeah.
Soon.
We're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's been a haul. Yes.
Okay, so you really approach real estate development from a community perspective. So I'd like to know. Everyone has this show is about real estate impact investing, and everyone has a very different opinion about what impact real estate should look like. And I'm just wondering what it looks like from your perspective.
Well, impact investing from our perspective is, I'll use a term. I'll share a term with you that we use internally in our company. And I think you heard me speak about this when we met a few years ago. We strive, our mission is to obtain holistic return on our investment of time, creativity, capital, whatever. And what I mean by that is we're seeking more than economic return on investment. We always have to clarify, we are a for-profit business. We are seeking a return on our capital for the risk and time that we have invested, but it's just 1/5 of what we're looking for. I mean, our number one priority is we seeking an emotional return on our investment. We're really motivated by doing inspired work that's meaningful, that makes a difference in people's lives, our lives. So we look for first an emotional return. Our second one is social return on investment. We're looking for a social return. And we named our company Venue Projects for a reason. And we just thought it was a perfect name to represent things like gathering spaces or people places or destinations or distinct artistic settings. So not only did we want to have a social impact, we wanted to bring people together and really, contribute towards building community. So emotional, social. Our third return on investment we're seeking is cultural. We're trying to create places that make an architectural statement or a cultural statement in our community that we do a lot of preservation through reuse. So we're also trying to do is unveil maybe unknown stories about these properties or Phoenix's past. We're a young city. Growing up here, I'm a native of Arizona. All I heard is that Phoenix has no soul and no history, and we've just always been the baby out in the Southwest. I always tell people today even though we're the fifth largest city in the U.S., we're like a gangly teenager who's like kind of figuring out his big body, and we're trying to figure ourselves out. And so we didn't have really a lot of stories to share, or we didn't celebrate them. And so we're starting to celebrate them to try to create some connections to a sense of place. Our fourth return is environmental return. We wanted, when we started our company, to set a new example for emerging developers that we can take existing building resources, even as uninspired as a lot of the buildings are in Phoenix, Arizona, because most of them have more of a very practical utilitarian mission behind their design. We have plenty of great architecture, but I would say the greater majority are pretty utilitarian buildings. So we wanted to show, well, these are already here. It's what we got, but what can we do with them without tearing them down? And we wanted to kind of show a counter approach to Phoenix's demolition culture.
Oh, interesting.
Legacy. It's like what we do have a lot of our boxes, either wood frame boxes, but we have a lot of masonry boxes. So if you've been in design or you've been in construction, like I have for over 24 years, one of the most efficient buildings to remodel or to construct cost efficiently are boxes. So we're starting with, in many cases, good bones. And I love the design challenge of manipulating boxes into something that was pretty uninspired and basic to something that's pretty magical and interesting. So the environmental return is, can we keep these out of landfills? Can we make them more energy efficient? Can we create an indoor-outdoor experience that adds trees? And we really value landscape, especially in our urban projects. We break all the rules with that. And in our retail projects, people be like, well, you can't see the signs. And we give people the benefit of the doubt. We're like, you know what? We're serving humans first and foremost, not the vehicle. And humans like to be in nature. And what we're learning 11 years in, people really do value our projects because of the atmosphere and environments that a lot of them have, with mature trees and desert flora and indoor-outdoor transitional spaces that open to the outdoors during the great times of year. And then obviously our fifth return is economic. So we always say, listen, we put economic as our fifth return because it is the foundation for our sustainability and our success. But really what we're seeking are those other four levels of return.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty fabulous. So obviously you think socially responsible real estate is necessary in today's development landscape, and it comes in all forms. And I'm wondering how you think that might be improved, because I think probably you and developers like you are still a rarity. They're not commonality. So how can we shift that pendulum?
So, our company was founded on a three-pronged mission: create, inspire, serve. Really to create beauty, but to create value and to create opportunity. But the inspire part of that is a big part, and the service element of it is a big part. We try to stay focused on, that's kind of our why we are even operating or why we do what we do. We try to model for other emerging developers or even other existing developers new ways of doing things just through our work, testing convention, and trying to prove that, hey, you can make great returns and create wonderful experiences by going against convention. So we actually spend a lot of time with in mentoring roles, or at Arizona State University in their master's in real estate development program, or through the Urban Land Institute. We try to inspire just different thinking and different approaches. And I'll tell you, when we got started in Phoenix in '08, it was the start of the recession. We intentionally started our company then because we knew that disruptive nature was going to, one, open doors to opportunity, but it was also going to allow us to buy properties at basis that would allow us to experiment and show new ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. I look at where we're at today across the city, and there's a whole slew of developers. Really, the bar has been raised, and they're approaching things with more sensitivity. I think it's part of what's happening here, but I think it's part of what's happening everywhere, where people want a more meaningful experience. They want to feel good about the places they patronize, and so I think social conscience. Yeah, social conscience is definitely changing.
One of the things that has changed, of course, is that many more people are coming back to cities. And so that has also kind of moved that type of development along. I when I started doing real estate development work in Pittsburgh, most people thought I was crazy, but it's worked out pretty well. And it's a really interesting, not dissimilar story to yours. Going to abandoned neighborhoods can be so fruitful in so many different ways. So
we found it very liberating because they're so hungry and motivated, enthusiastic for positive change. And quite often we go into these communities and they've been dealing with blight and issues. So I think what we've learned in reflecting back on the work and just analyzing sort of the impact some of our projects have had in the communities that they've been developed in is that I think you give people hope and confidence. And I think we realized that more in the deep recession, that sort of 2010 through 13, when we were really kind of feeling the pain in Phoenix here. People were uplifted by these places that were positive, right? They were different. They offered a place where people could come together and have a positive experience, even down to the community and economic development piece of it. People were so grateful for the jobs, to be involved in such meaningful projects that were valued, right? People were excited about them. So they felt, I love the sense of pride that you would see at our sort of friends and family openings when we would invite our tradespeoples to this. You could see the pride of the laborer or the carpenter or the tradesman when they brought their families, we did this. So the impact of investing can go well beyond the economic of the return to the developer or the tenants or what have you, but it really can be pretty fruitful for the neighborhood. I mean, we've seen tremendous stimulation in terms of attracting additional reinvestment in redevelopment.
Yeah. I think that's right. So are there any current trends in real estate that that are sort of interesting to you at the moment?
Yeah. I find real estate very creative and innovative right now. And I love the spirit behind, especially infill and redevelopment and reuse. We're seeing some really fun projects out there. But I'm intrigued and enthused by places like food courts. I'm an 80s kid. I grew up in malls. So I just find it interesting. I've traveled across the U.S. and have seen all kinds of food courts. But man, they sure are resonating with people as food hubs and this foodie culture. I mean, people are coming and gathering around a meal. I mean, there's just so much symbolic pieces to that. I just love they've become sort of these living rooms. I'm really intrigued with mobility and the built environment responding to the rapid innovation and evolution we're seeing in technology. So I'm fascinated with mobility. And in Arizona, we're at the heart of autonomous vehicle development. And so we're involved in some creative consulting projects where we're partnering with groups out of the Bay Area. And I'm working on a project right now where they're developing a carless residential mixed-use community. And just when you really think about that, on what would it be like to support carless living in a city like Phoenix, is really pretty disruptive and stretches the brain, but it's so liberating in so many ways to not be locked down with the car. And it's fun to look at things like autonomous vehicle and how we do Instacart food delivery. And if we're going to have an on-site grocery, maybe it's more of a hacked version where it's really more of a processing and storage place where people gather and have a social experience because they can get, food delivery from the big retailers. So now the grocery doesn't have to be there. It can be delivered to you.
I mean, I think, even in Pittsburgh, we've been, which is a hilly city.
Yeah.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen an explosion in bike riders and also an explosion of people who really don't want to own a car. So it's been interesting watching the code changes, because I'm working on a little project at the moment where in a neighborhood that used to demand one vehicle per unit, and now you get a 50% discount.
Yeah.
So it's really it's gone beyond just pioneering now. It's starting to infiltrate government.
It really is. It's really, we're seeing scooters, bikes, trails, pedestrian-oriented trail systems.
Right. So, Lorenzo, I have to ask you, with all the super malls that are vacant, what would you do with those?
Oh my God.
There's one near me here that is for sale.
It's so funny. When we started our company, people were like, that's an interesting focus, redevelopment. But I was just like, to me, it made a lot of sense because I just knew we were going into an area of serious change and reimagination and having to really respond to the evolution of technology. Malls to me are fascinating because
they really are, aren't they?
Of land, the size of buildings, the linear nature of them. They're really unique design challenges. Yeah, I would love an opportunity. I'm sure we'll fall into them. We've seen some interesting redevelopments in Phoenix because we're like strip center mall epicenter of the Southwest. So it's really funny to see some of the creative ideas coming out around there. A lot of them are turning into mixed use hubs where they're integrating housing and lodging and creative office. Even things like the big box is becoming inner city fulfillment for e-commerce, which is pretty fascinating mix.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really completely different landscape. Retail isn't what it used to be. It's fascinating, and we have a lot of them around here. And there's one in particular that is just completely vacant. It's enormous, and I think about what it might become. It could be interesting.
I'll tell you the other trends that are exciting to me are, like you said, e-commerce is really. I think retail is really interesting. It's really becoming more experience based. And I think micro hospitality, what Airbnb has done to really just totally turn lodging and housing inside out is pretty fascinating. And even the tiny home movement, I thought maybe was probably more of a trend, but it seems like people are really valuing scarcity and preciousness, and they're willing to do more with less if they get the space they need. It's a really fascinating time.
It is fascinating. It is really fascinating. So, I suppose the big question is, what do we need to think about to make our cities and neighborhoods better places for everyone? Clearly, you are really thinking about that a lot. So I'm also wondering what community engagement tools you have seen that have worked for you. It sounds very much like that you do engage your community a lot, and I'm wondering how you go about doing that.
We do it on a variety of levels. First and foremost, every one of our projects has required some sort of entitlement and community outreach. We learned early on that if you're going to do this kind of work, it's kind of like dating. You got to make yourself vulnerable and available. And so we do all our own speaking We started really with the mission to own and operate our buildings. And really, we feel we have a responsibility as stewards to those properties to be a good neighbor. And so to be good listeners. So it has not been always a pleasant experience. We certainly
No, that's for sure.
And people continue, more so in the beginning, continue to question our agenda or our authenticity. I'll tell you, 11 years in and having, a nice track record and a nice body of work behind us that shows consistency helps us way more today. I mean, we're being invited in and people are like excited when we're coming into neighborhoods. But the speaking for ourselves, one of the things we also do is willing to meet with people, especially the pessimists, one-on-one. We make the job site open to people. So I'm a big fan of giving tours because I get as much out of it as they do. And I find that one-on-one is such a human piece of it. And we're not always successful. I mean, we've had people that have opposed us start to finish, and maybe it's a little less contentious at the end because you've kind of built a relationship. And I've just learned that, hey, you're not going to always turn everybody, and I can control what I can control, and I can control our behavior, our actions by just doing what we say we're going to do. I can't emphasize that enough. If you're going to be in this business, you're going to be in it long term, you've got to do it you say you're going to do. And if you stub your toe in any shape, way, or form, you got to be willing to be accountable and say, hey, we didn't anticipate that. Or, we should have done that better, but we're not running away from it. We'll be here to help fix it.
Yeah, somehow developer, the name developer has become a dirty word in our society.
Yeah, demonized.
We are not all the same. There are quite a few developers out there. I see them through Small Change every day who are extremely thoughtful about what they do and really care about the communities. And there's just so much mistrust. It's really a shame.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think any industry probably has that, but it's funny. Kimber will sort of cringe when I tell people I'm a real estate developer because she knows how demonized. Well, how demonized. She looks at me and she just says, "You are so much more than a developer. You're so not a developer." And I just sort of chuckle. That's why I tell people I'm really more of a real estate entrepreneur. And people ask me, what do you mean by that? I just say, well, I mean, we touch every aspect of it. From we design the concept, we design the building, we design the operating system, we finance it, we lease it, we own it, we build it, we operate it, we maintain it, we manage it. We do everything around it. And so I don't know. And they're all so unique.
There are lots like you, though. And that's what makes it sad that, we can't say what we do and be proud of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe there needs to be a shift in semantics or something, but the small scale forum through ULI, is part, not only social and networking, it's also part therapy.
Yes.
To commiserate with each other. Because I'm always amazed that no matter where we're at in the US or sometimes even out of the country, how consistent that is because of the actions of others that are just purely transactional motivated.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So do you think that equity crowdfunding can play a role in building communities like the ones you're interested in?
I just thought
that's a loaded question, Lorenzo.
Yeah, I know. We've the quick answer is absolutely yes. I've always had an interest in it, and we're going to do something together, Eve. I know it.
I know we are, yeah.
But what I love about it is the democratization of finance. I'm such a critic on our broken system that's really set up to do big soulless projects. What I love about the crowdfunding is it just provides access and the platform and opportunity for people to vote with their dollar and support things that are close to them, that are on their main street, not Wall Street kind of a deal. So it's just, I think it's great for the developer. I think it's great for the communities. I think it's great for the individual who maybe doesn't want to take the level of capital risk, but wants to maybe invest in real estate indirectly, or they just flat out want to support an initiative or a neighborhood.
They want to invest in their city, which is really why we're doing it. So So I suppose my wrap-up question for you is, where do you think the future of real estate impact investing lies?
I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I think with just such a social mission being part of business today, from very micro business to the mega business, I think there's a expectation that an obligation that businesses have to do good, on some level. And with real estate, I don't think we're going to be any different. I think it's only going to.
Yeah.
I think it's only going to grow.
So, okay, now I have 3 sign-off questions, which I have
Sure.
to ask you. I'm asking everyone these because it's very interesting to see the variety of answers I get. The first is, what's the key factor that makes a real estate project impactful to you?
So for us, it's one that has the opportunity to hit on all those 5 levels of return that we identified for holistic ROI. We get presented a ton of opportunities that a good chunk of them return on 1 or 2, right? I mean, there's one that's kind of like, yeah, that one could be a home run, but it really, sure, it provides great impact for me and maybe puts a use in an underused building. But outside of that, I don't know if it's adding the value that we're seeking. So we're looking for sort of a building or a real estate project that has the ability to generate those 5 levels of return.
Okay. And other than raising money, do you think there are other benefits for involving a crowd of investors in real estate?
Yeah, I think it provides potentially a disruptive force and influence to shake up the system that's sort of geared towards, bigger projects and maybe commodity stuff. I think it's going to, like every industry is seeing, I think it's going to continue to grow and force the big banks and lending institutions to innovate and be more flexible. Because if they don't, they're going to become quickly irrelevant because people aren't necessarily going to need to just like we're seeing in other industries. Before the players were like 2 or 3 key people, but then once it gets fragmented, there's abundant choices on how you could finance a real estate project, as we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that, the traditional banks, first of all, we had, I think, 15,000 of over 15,000 banks 20 years ago, and we're down to less than 5,000 now. And it's like innovation is being squashed out of these sort of real estate deals by financial institutions that have to follow very, very rigorous rules about what they invest in, and what they want to invest in is what they've seen before, not something new. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, so. I'm actually fascinated that I'm going to be fascinated to see because of what we're seeing, so much disruption in so many industries. But we've got these weird forces, right? You've got this demand for one-of-a-kind, unproven, sort of disruptive type projects that don't fit the mold of lending. You also have a situation where you have just a ton of money and capital out in the marketplace. And I think people are just learning now that, hey, maybe I don't have to put it through the big bank. Maybe we can just do private lending and not be so restrictive. And I think when we're starting to see things loosen up, you're starting to see more creative projects. It's only going to get exacerbated when we start seeing disruption in construction, right? Like 3D printing or panelization or modulation that don't fit the black and white criteria that maybe a bank wants, or appraisers want to see, abundant parking. We're seeing so much fragmentation. I think you're going to see capital follow.
Yes, I think that would be great. Well, I'm hoping that's what small change can do.
Sure can.
Play a little part in, but it's very difficult to do a new and necessary project at the moment. And then here's the really big question. How do you think real estate development in the U.S. can be improved?
First, I'd go back to finance. We've got to find more flexible and creative financing vehicles that facilitate innovation and creativity in both uses and in product type. On the same note, building upon that, I think we need a major policy overhaul in cities across the U.S. I think we're seeing examples, but We need to really, as we are looking at more urbanization, I can just speak to Phoenix. We were really built around suburban greenfield development models. So, like my hotel project, I think we have something like 20 variances and, 10 use permits to get what we want done. And it's just kind of like, why? It costs a lot of time and money, and it limits creativity and adaptability. So I think for cities to be...
You're paving the way.
Yeah. So policy changes on zoning and land use is going to be my number 2. And my number 3, too, is just more acceptance of alternative delivery for construction and manufacturing. On the flip side, the complementary piece of that is we've got to redignify the trades and not push everyone into college and get more craftsmen out there, because
with you.
God, at the end of the day, we're building the built environment for human beings, and human beings are emotional, soulful creatures. And while I do believe that automation and robotics and all that stuff are definitely going to help mitigate the lack of labor, at the end of the day, you still need that human sensitivity, I think, to deliver environments that humans want to live in. And the artful piece of it, the craft, but from the hand, from the human being with this emotional sensitivity is key. So I'd like to see shop programs and the arts revalued in the education system, and weaving business into the arts from a young age, I think will really help the future of real estate and just business in general.
Well, that's a really lovely way to wrap up. And I'm certain that you've convinced a lot of people that all developers are not bad. If they haven't gone to your website yet, I'm sure they will any moment now. I know I'm itching to go back and take a look at what you're working on.
Thanks.
So thank you very much, Lorenzo, and we'll be talking soon.
Yes, Eve, it was a pleasure. It was great catching up with you. Thanks for the opportunity to share.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
That was Lorenzo Perez. I've come away thoroughly inspired by his entrepreneurial approach to real estate, and I'm itching to stay in his new hotel in Phoenix as soon as it opens. Here are some things I learned from Lorenzo. First, that ugly duckling buildings can make fantastic projects. Approach them like an artist does, as a blank canvas, and so much can emerge. Second, that developers can take an entrepreneurial and opportunistic approach, injecting creativity instead of formula into their projects. And third, that disruption in both real estate and financing models will lead to better cities and neighborhoods for everyone. Financial institutions are squeezing the ability of creative developers like Lorenzo to experiment. This has to change. You can find out more about impact real estate investing and access the show notes for today's episode at my website, evepicker.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to find out more about how to make money in real estate while building better cities. We'll talk again soon, but for now, this is Eve Picker signing off to go make some change.